Joining us once again today, folks, on the 11th of June, 2021, is USA Eagles head coach Gary Gold. And I just want to get on and talk for a few minutes about selections for the summer test series. Now, you're going to the UK on the 4th of July. Ironically, you'll be playing England at Twickenham. That's kind of the mecca of rugby there. And then just 6 days after that, you'll be in Dublin at Aviva Stadium playing the Irish Rugby Football Union. So, Gary, these two test matches coming up, I've seen you at several venues. I was out there. We've run into each other a couple of times as you were looking at Major League Rugby players to make these selections. And there's a few things we'll probably talk about here. You might want to talk about is how Major League Rugby, the existence of it, has given us some advantages here as far as players with experience, and also chance that players have had. Gary's trying to get a better position there for the light. There it is. Much better. That'll work. Pay no attention to those boxes on top of the shelf.
Yeah,
but there are some advantages. The fact that we have professional rugby now here in the States, you've got players playing week in and week out with each other or against each other. So, Gary, you were traveling around, and Major League Rugby has been a big focus for the selection. Has it been helpful to have Major League Rugby to come up with an Eagle squad?
Oh, there's no question of a doubt. Any competition that our players can play in is going to be hugely valuable. When I first started with the Eagles, off the back of, in our first tour, the guys have been selected after having not played rugby for nearly 6 months. So, the fact that they're now able to be able to get into camp and play is a massive thing for us, being a competitive environment day in and out has made a huge difference. A daily training environment, the coaching's really improved as well over the years as well. So that makes a huge difference. And, just for our guys to get to understand and be a part of a professional environment has made a huge difference. That from their benefit point of view, which is the most important thing. And then from our benefit, obviously the importance of being able to monitor and track the players, stay in touch with the clubs, find out how they're doing, get to understand what they're doing during the course of the week, in terms of their running or the rugby element of things. And then we track it every single week from a game performance point of view. So we've got a much better handle. We can make much better decisions on the selections, and it's not so much of a situation where you're guessing anymore in terms of how I think it probably was largely through no fault of anybody's in the old days. And just hoping that you're getting guys who are A, fit enough, and B, good enough to play international rugby. So, it's been a huge benefit. It's going to be very interesting for me to see how we do go against these two nations. Obviously everybody's been really hit hard by COVID at the moment, and England and Ireland are two countries who've actually been able to play quite a lot of rugby. So, for us not having played for 2 years, it's going to be incredibly difficult, but they're going to be two very, very tough test matches, but that's what we wanted.
Well, in fact, that's a good point that you make there, Gary. The last time the Eagles were on the pitch was in Osaka against Tonga, if I'm not mistaken, in 2019, yes?
That's right, yeah.
So that's quite a challenge. Now, let me ask this question: with Major League Rugby season in full swing, and of course you've been looking for talent out there, walking around. We've got the season still in progress right now. Have you already gotten players, or will they be released to you at a certain point? Yeah, it doesn't look like you have the benefit of several weeks of a training camp to get guys ready.
No, unfortunately, it's not the situation. We've announced the squad now, and unfortunately, we're going to have to wait for the weekend's games of that weekend, the 24th, 25th, 26th weekend, to be completed before the guys are able to fly out. So, again, not an ideal situation that, a handful of our guys, particularly the guys playing on the West Coast on Sunday, are only really going to get into London on a Tuesday before a weekend's test match, which is far from ideal, but it is what it is. I'd rather do that than be able to play. So it's a difficult situation at the moment that we're going through for various different reasons. But that's just another one of the challenges that we've got. But we're not able to get together. We haven't been able to get together either. But what we have done is, we've got issues like this, Chris. We've got Zoom, and we can communicate to the players, and we can stay in touch, and hopefully share as much information as possible. And luckily, the good news is that the guys are actually getting to play rugby.
Well, and I'd say the other thing too is while you have, I see that your pared down squad, your travel squad for the UK and Ireland is 30. It was announced. I see that you've got at least 9 uncapped players on there, but you still have a lot of players. You got the granddaddy long legs there, Cam Dolan with 51 test matches under his belt, and a number of players in the 20 test match bracket. So surprisingly, I didn't realize that Germishuys has got 21 tests under his belt already. He's been at this for 5 years. It seems like he just came on a scene yesterday. But what I'm getting at is you've got some experience there. It's not like it's all debutantes. So do you feel comfortable with the mix of veterans and the level of experience in international tests and then having some uncapped guys?
Yeah, I mean, that was the whole, if I can call it, the science behind the selection. I mean, there was a lot of thinking behind the selection, many hours of a thought process. We wanted to use the opportunity to reward players who had played well in the MLR, reward players who had played well, but particularly in the MLR. But we wanted to do that in conjunction with not necessarily giving up all of our experience. So the spine of our team will still be really experienced. You know, we've got experienced hookers, experienced second rowers, a handful of experienced back rowers. AJ obviously in the mix as well, and then the likes of Mikey Tears and Will Hooley's in the outside backs with Marcel, does give us that level of experience with also the exuberance of youth and the exciting prospects of some of the younger players that are doing really well in the MLR at the moment, who we're looking to give a chance to. So it was the idea. I mean, again, these test matches are obviously very, very important, but we really now having to use these test matches as a preparation period for our Rugby World Cup qualifiers later in the year in September and October. So, we'll get to see a whole lot of players. We'll continue to get to see quite a lot more of the MLR before the end of the regular season, which is another 6 weeks left. And, then it's down to the real business side of things, which is playing Canada in September.
Well, that's what I was about to get at, is that we're only 2 years away from 2023 because of all this nonsense we've had to deal with around the globe the past 18 months. So it's not that far. We're already in the window for 2023. And so this is a proving ground. And I was going to get to that. I'm sure that you probably have different markers of success, and maybe you may not want to say them, but from an Eagles fans perspective, I would say the fact that we field a team is a victory in itself. I mean, it's been a challenging time. Number two, the fact that you're able to get talent that's played against each other and gotten a lot of time in this year just before you go to do the test. That's one. And then the fact that you're able to schedule test matches against the likes of the tier 1 nations of England and Ireland. There was rumor that the Eagles might get to play against the Springboks this summer, but that doesn't seem to have come to fruition. They went with Georgia for 2 test series, and then the British and Irish Lions to empty stadiums, mind you. But that's coming up. But so this is, I think that probably from a fans' perspective, we should be understanding, realize that this is kind of a proving ground for the Eagles to get ready for what really matters, and that's qualifying for the World Cup. Did I get that right? Or would that be your sentiment?
Yeah, I think that's pretty spot on. I think that's fair to say. I mean, in terms of expectations, obviously within the camp, we set ourselves extraordinarily high expectations. I mean, obviously we're going to go to the UK with, the best expectations, but we realize how tough it's going to be, not only playing away from home, not only because of the travel, not only we hugely affected. 1 or 2 players that we wanted to select into the squad can't come because of 1 or 2 various COVID situations, COVID won't even allow it. In fact, the game against the Springboks was supposed to have gone ahead. And the only reason the games didn't go ahead with the Springboks is because it was also in the schedule for us to play England, and we can't play South Africa and get into England in time because of COVID. So that's actually the only reason why they went with Georgia. Otherwise, we were scheduled to play South Africa in those 2 tests. But, that's just the time that we're in at the moment now. And, they're challenges and they speed bumps in the road, and we accept them and we move on. But I think you've summed it up really, really well. I mean, we're going to use these 2 weeks as valuably as we possibly can, as you say, to first and foremost, hopefully put up a really, really credible performance against England and Ireland. And then secondly, because, it's going to be invaluable time for us to be able to spend together before we come together for what's really going to be an important test series against Canada.
Well, can you just imagine? I'm sure that you were probably pretty excited about it. I imagine fans, all these years, many of us complained about the fact that it's difficult to get matches against tier one nations. And then we potentially, if it were not for COVID, would have had the Springboks, England, and Ireland all in one test season. That would have been unbelievable. It's still pretty unbelievable to get England and Ireland one test season, but man, it would have been something else. We could also got Springboks in there. So maybe we'll get that test scheduled in the future if we get past this nonsense.
Well, that's right, Chris. I mean, that's so true what you say there. A handful of years ago, all of us were moaning and groaning we can't get, tier one opposition, and nobody wants to play us. And now we've got a number of those opportunities, and in fact, to be honest with you, there might even be a few more during the course of this year. There still might be some more, really good fixtures lined up for the rest of this year. So, I mean, it's exciting times at the moment, and I think we must embrace it and we must be positive about it. And there's as I said earlier, there are loads of challenges that we've got, but lots of other people have got challenges as well. It's just a privilege to be back and playing, and wearing the USA jersey again, and being able to get onto the park. And look, I have absolutely no doubt that this group of 30 guys are going to give their all for 80 minutes of rugby. And funnier things have happened. Well, I think I'd have to say, Gary, that I'm sure I'm preaching to the converted. You're the head coach, the plan, but I think for Eagles fans, the priority here really is to knock Canada back. Sorry, Canada, but we've got to get that number one selection. We got to get that selection so that spend the next 2 years getting more experience for players and bringing young guys along so that we actually can win maybe a couple of games in 2023 in France. That would be pretty amazing. Tough pool for us in 2023, but nonetheless, there's a chance the Eagles could impress some folks there if we get into that first qualifier. Yeah, exactly. Let's just take it one step at a time. And as you quite rightly say, after the summer, our next big challenge is Canada in a home and away fixture, and just a huge amount of respect for our rivals. I think, the fact that they're together largely as a group in the MLR is going to have made a huge difference for them. Again, don't underestimate how difficult it's been for the Arrows in this MLR competition. These poor guys haven't actually been home for months and months, all living out of suitcases because of the pandemic and just to play rugby. And so I think people would be making a very grave error if they write off that Canadian team. If anything, I think they're going to be stronger because of it. So I've got a huge amount of respect for them, for their coaching staff. I'm worried about the challenge that they're going to bring, and that's the reason why we have to be unbelievably well prepared for what when we play against them in September.
Now, you've made a couple additions to your coaching staff here. I noticed recently. I see that you've hired Rob Hoadley as an assistant coach, and the former Eagle Chris Wyatt has come on as a coach assistant. Is that helping you flesh out your coaching staff, and you think that's going to make a difference for you?
No, it's not flushing out the coaching staff. I mean, the other issue that we've got at the moment is, a lot of those coaches are involved in the MLR, and they can't get away at the moment now. If you remember, originally, according to the original plan, the MLR was supposed to have been over by July. Unfortunately, it was put back because of the pandemic, and that's the only reason why there's an overlap at the moment now. Again, through no fault of anybody's other than the pandemic. So that's put me in a position where the current coaching staff or the coaches that are all working in the MLR aren't available at the moment now, and so that's been a little bit unfortunate, but it has allowed an opportunity for a hugely experienced guy like Rob Hoadley to come on board. Ironically enough, I was actually looking at Hoads to potentially bring him in any case, just because of his experience, his knowledge of the US players and his massive success that he's had at San Diego, and just a hugely experienced coach around and about the entire situation, whether it's the college game or the club game right around the country. So he's going to join us, and yes, Chris is based in the UK at the moment, obviously recently retired, and Chris is going to be working with our senior players as a coach assistant as well. That's right.
Yeah, no, I think I might not have enunciated well. I said fleshing out. I think you might have heard me say flushing out. I don't. I hope that's not what you heard. I wasn't saying flushing your coaching staff. I meant
Yeah. No, I'm not flushing anybody out.
Fleshing out. And that's what I was getting at. Is because all involved Major League Rugby, it's probably difficult for you to pull guys in that simply aren't available.
Right.
Like if you want Scott Lawrence, you can't have him. He's in Rugby Atlanta. He's kind of busy right now. So that's where I was going. Well, thanks for that, Gary. So AJ McGinty is your captain once again. He's that fly half is done well with the U.S. He's approaching 30 caps. I think this will be his 29th cap. I imagine he's looking forward to this chance to go to England because, of course, he's played over on that side of the pond.
Yeah, he's been absolutely massive for us. We've got one of the things that we've looked to implement and change because of the pandemic, but just also because of a lot of the situations, is having a lot more of a player-led environment, where the players are going to have a lot more say in terms of the direction that they're looking to take. And, on that front, AJ has been fantastic with his group of senior players. Bryce and Marcel, and even Nate Augsburger, even though Nate's injured. I mean, Nate would have gone on tour otherwise. Nate's input's been brilliant, and Bryce and Will Hooley and Cam Dolan and Nick Savetta, and they've been absolutely, Nate Breakley as well. They've all been brilliant in terms of having conversations with them, and AJ's been largely heading that up, particularly around the attack and what the players are aspiring to do. And it's exciting times from that point of view. I've got to a situation now where we're in the group and we've been together long enough that there's just a huge amount of trust, that I have for the players and the player group, and I'm excited to work alongside them in terms of this new way that I'm wanting us to work, which is a hell of a lot more player led. And with the senior players that we've got in the group taking the lead with that, it's exciting to see the product that we can produce at the end of the day.
Well, Gary, what I want to ask you, because you've just mentioned a lot of the old stalwarts and names we know, Marcel, you talk about Nate Breakley, you talk about Nick Savetta, Cam Dolan, names that Eagles fans are going to recognize, faces are going to know because they've been around there for a while and they've been contributing. But you've got some debutantes here. You've got 9 uncapped players you're taking to the Isles. And I'm looking at the list, and one that stands out to me is Luke Carty. I don't know if people know him, but I think they want to keep an eye on him. Any players we should, without letting any secrets out of the planning for the game, any of these new players that people may not know that we might want to keep an eye out for seeing them perform on the pitch?
Well, again, I mean, if anybody's been following MLR rugby, I'm sure none of these names will be unfamiliar to anybody. Mike Deboulis has been doing really well for Old Glory. He's a multifunctional player. He's played in a couple of positions there. Ryan Reese has done very well for Atlanta. And as you say, Luke Carty has done very, very well, obviously playing behind Matt Gitter, but when he's come on, he's made a huge impression. I've watched a lot of his rugby. I've watched a lot of the tape that I've been able to get my hands on, not only from the LA games that he's come on, but a little bit of his history as well. He's got a huge rugby pedigree coming from Ireland, obviously, and his brother being in the Irish squad. And he wanted to make the move for that very reason, to put his hand up to play for USA. So, I mean, I'm excited about all the youngsters that we've got. Connor Mooneyhan's first draft last year, in the draft, which was just announced yesterday. There's going to take place again in August of this year, and it's great to see that we are able to acknowledge a guy that the league acknowledged by being a first draft pick. He's stepped up and he's lived up to those expectations, and we're excited to give him an opportunity, and that goes for all. I think it's actually 10. I think it goes for all 10 of the guys who haven't yet been capped. We're excited to see them all and see if they can step up to the plate. And we realize it's going to be an absolutely monumental challenge for some of these guys. A lot of these guys have only recently just come into MLR, and even that level is quite high. And test match rugby, especially against teams who are both in the top 5 of the world rankings, will be a significant step up. There's no question of a doubt. And it's going to be interesting to see, how the guys go and how they can make the step up.
Well, I would think that any objective observer would look at your selections to make the trip, and 10 out of 30 that are going are uncapped players. That clearly shows a commitment towards developing and building a squad so you can have a good chance in the games that really matter coming down the road, the World Cup and any other competitions we got going on. So I think it's really encouraging. Are you well, I should ask this question. So to Twickenham, the last thing I saw is they're limiting the audience to 10,000 spectators, even though Japan is playing the British and Irish Lions. They have 16,000 at Murray Field. So, but London's only getting 10,000. Will there be fans in the stands at Aviva Stadium? I've not found any information about whether there'll be spectators or it'll be an empty stadium. Do you know that yet?
My understanding is that on both of those fronts, Chris, that they're actually reviewing the whole policy as we speak. There's a whole situation going on at the moment where England is supposed to come out of full lockdown on the 21st officially, and then I believe it's going to be looked at every week after that in terms of what's happening. So I've heard a number of things. I've heard it could potentially be more than 10,000 in Twickenham. I think it could be up to a third, which would be nearly 30,000 spectators. And at this stage, I've heard nothing in the Aviva, but again, somebody contacted me 2 days ago and said from Ireland and said that they had announced that there may be spectators. So I think it's a bit of a wait and see situation. I mean, again, it's been this whole pandemic has been a moving target the entire time. So, I mean, there's no reason it should stop being a moving target now. But, the more people that are being vaccinated, I'm assuming, I'm not a doctor, but I'm assuming that's a good thing, and I think more people that have been vaccinated means that, then we're on top of that. And that means more people can mingle in public spaces. So again, I don't have a definitive answer for you, but the latest I've heard is that it'll be about 30,000 in Twickenham. And at this stage, we're still waiting to hear what the story is in Ireland.
But even at just 10,000, that's going to be more spectators than most of the guys playing for the Eagles ever experienced in their career, except for those who played overseas. So, I mean, that's got to be, that alone, that environment, say it's 10 or 30,000, has to be very good to get these guys developed. I mean, playing in front of crowds of that size in an iconic rugby location definitely has got to be part of the experience for development.
No question of a doubt, and playing the quality of players that we're going to play. I know the British and Irish Lions are on tour, but it'll still be two very, very good rugby teams in Ireland and in England. We often, it's the case that, those second stringer guys, well, they're not really second stringers because it's not actually an England B team. It's just the guys who are not going to be there from Ireland. Often they're going to see this as an opportunity to take their chance, and if Carl Sinclair is away, then it may be a wonderful opportunity for the next tight head to really put his hand up and put up a good showing, and so in many ways it's almost actually going to be tougher from that point of view, because if I can explain it like this, it's going to be like for like. So a young Max Malins who hasn't played a lot of Test rugby, he's going to see this as an opportunity to impress Eddie Jones. Whereas if Elliot Daly was available and Max Malins didn't get selected, it could be a situation where Elliot Daly comes in and probably, who knows? I'm not saying they would underestimate us, but, they may think it'll be an easier test match. Whereas, that's not going to be the case of in their case, a young debutant or even a young pup who hasn't played a lot of test match rugby is going to take this incredibly seriously. So in many ways, I think the test matches are almost actually going to be tougher for us, from that point of view. And that's great. That's wonderful. I mean, that's what we need to do. We need to do a lot more of that before we get to the next World Cup. We need to play in these iconic stadiums and understand what the pressure looks like and, start to enjoy that pressure and thrive off it. And as you say, get the crowd behind us as well. I think the one thing that's going to be really wonderful is no matter where we play around the world, there's always going to be a fantastic fan base from an American point of view, So I'm excited about that. I'm excited that if it's 10,000 or it's 30,000, that we'll get a lot of local supporters from USA Eagles supporters based out in London.
No doubt about that. There's a good American contingent in and around London that definitely come to the game. And it's also kind of ironic, or not ironic, but iconic that although it's lost on many people, that the game will be on the 4th of July, our Independence Day against England. So that should be interesting. Well, Gary, I think you've got a flight to catch. So I'm going to ask you one final question here, and thank you for your time. But the last question I want to ask is that looking at your selection for this and all the players, everybody appears to be playing at professional rugby level, whether it's out playing for the Western Force like Marcel Branch is doing, or if it's guys playing for the Sale Sharks or playing here in Major League Rugby. Are the days of a couple World Cup cycles ago gone forever now? Because American Eagles rugby was always, well, how do we find these players? A couple guys like Chris Wyatt is playing overseas, Todd Clever's playing overseas. But beyond that, I mean, you really had to go hunt down rugby clubs and find guys that were transitioning from football probably to rugby and learning the game. Are chances for folks coming up that way, are they gone? Or was your selection this year focused in this respect because you had the COVID pandemic to deal with and you couldn't just do everything? So I guess my question is, will we see amateurs on the teams in the future, or is it going to be a focus on professionals, do you think, going forward, at least during your tenure?
No, I would never say that the days of picking a guy out of a club are gone. I would never say that. I would, though, in all honesty, say that it would probably be highly unlikely because, Chris, I'm looking at, a depth chart of 60 to 80 players. I'd love a depth chart of 120, and I think we'll get there sooner rather than later. But at the moment now, we're sitting with a comfortable depth chart of 60, where we four deep per position, and reasonably comfortable. I mean, that's 4 quality players in each one of those positions that we're looking at in the depth chart, and that we've narrowed down to 41. And then obviously now we've narrowed that down to 30. And that's with injuries and guys who can't tour, et cetera, et cetera. But if that's what I'm doing, can you imagine what the 13 MLR clubs are doing? If you think I'm looking for the best amateur out in Dallas or Mystic or Belmont Shore or Glendale, wherever I'm going to look across the country, what do you think the MLR clubs are doing? Because they want to recruit locally as well. Most of them do. They would want an opportunity to be able to bring in the next best American talent that there is. There's crossover camps that are going on around the country, but some very, very successful ones. Currently, I mean, tomorrow, the place I'm going to tomorrow we're going to Utah because there's a Talent ID Day there, which Hugh Bevan and the crew have been running for 7 weeks now in 7 different locations, from Hawaii to Seattle to Salt Lake to all over the show. And that's also trying to unearth the next talents in our U20s and our U23 ranks, U18s and U20s, I beg your pardon. And so all these clubs are looking for these players, and geographically, they're going to have a much better idea whether you're in Boston, who your local clubs are, whether you're in New York, who your local clubs are, or, and there's a potential that 1 or 2 more major league clubs will come on board next year. So that's going to make it up to 14 or 16. So with all of those guys recruiting and bringing guys in, whether that's on an AC contract, which is just a daily rate contract, or whether they're going to get a full professional contract, they're going to be exposed to that form of rugby. So it's a wonderful scenario for rugby players around the country that, if they're half decent, there's probably a club that's going to look at them and pick them up. I mean, if they're in that position to play. But I mean, you very well may have a situation where a guy is a qualified lawyer already, or he's a doctor, or he's a professional. He's got his own plumbing business, and he doesn't necessarily want to play professional rugby, but he'll go down and he'll make himself available for the local club team. And I'm quite sure we'll hear about those guys. I'm quite sure that we would never close the door on those guys. So I would never say no to something like that. It's just going to be less and less likely to happen because, thankfully, I might add, we've got a wonderful, striving domestic game in the MLR at the moment, and those guys are working incredibly hard to recruit great rugby players. Locally is better as well because it's more cost effective, and because you've got no limitations in the amount of American players, US-based players you can have, and so it makes sense all around. So thankfully, in many ways, the MLR clubs are really helping me with my job in a very, very big way. But no, I would never close the door, but I would say it's going to be less and less likely.
Well, Gary, thanks a lot. That's really encouraging news. I mean, I figured you weren't closing the door, but I wanted to make it clear to people by getting your feedback that because we've got professional rugby here in the States now, and you've really fleshed this out by saying that, you know, all these clubs are looking for this talent. You've actually got, you know, a dozen talent scouts helping you out indirectly with Major League Rugby, looking for all these players and bringing them people's attention. So it really does help out, and that's some good news. But I mean, you know, it's not like 1991. Hey, who plays rugby? I heard this guy in Colorado plays. Let's get him to come out and try out for the team. It'll be more challenging. You've got to have a more traditional path.
No, it's not going to be like that anymore. But also, don't underestimate the value of the college game as well. You know, I mean, the college game, unfortunately, they've been really badly hit. Unfortunately, you know, they have played very, very little rugby, or very few of them have been able to play rugby. You know, when the college game gets back up and running, and those kids are at university, you know, and now we're getting our D1A league up and running, and you're able to watch the Lindenwoods and St. Mary's and Kells of the world, and Arkansas and Arkansas State or BYU all over the show, you know, then that's another pool that I would absolutely, definitely not ignore, because that's where your next crop of brilliant talent is, you know. And you know, I absolutely have no question of a doubt that there would definitely be some kids, young guys, not kids, I beg your pardon, younger guys at university, you know, seniors who would be knocking on the door, and if they're good enough, they're old enough. You know, that's pretty much my philosophy. So, you know, who also may be, you know, looking at the next opportunity to play for the Eagles.
Now, you mentioned that, of course, the Cal Bears, and you've got Arizona, you've got Kutztown, you've got Life, lots of great rugby programs out there at the collegiate level. And yeah, they've been eviscerated. The sevens version, the Collegiate Rugby Championship, CRC, which is normally in Philadelphia, wasn't there this year. It was postponed last year. They did it in New Orleans, very different sort of thing. But Gary, I know you've got to catch a flight, so I want to thank you. And if I somehow figure out the secret code and get the decoder ring for the body cavity search and DNA to make it to the Twickenham game, maybe we can link up and do an interview there. And I, of course, if I'm going to get Twickenham, I'm going to have to follow my way over to get the River Liffey and have a few Guinnesses to make it to Aviva. So, but if I don't make it, best of luck to the Eagles, and we're really looking forward to seeing you guys excel on the pitch. Thanks a lot for your time, Gary. I appreciate it. Thanks very much. Thanks for having me again. And yeah, hopefully many of you can travel, and it'll be awesome to see you all over across the pond in the next month. Thanks for your time, Chris. Oh, and thank you for yours, Gary. We'll catch up with you again. Thanks a lot, and a safe journey. Thank you very much. All the best. All right, cheers. Ladies and gentlemen, that's USA Eagles head coach Gary Gold, who joined me for this session. Really appreciate him taking the time to pop in here and get us up to date on his selections for the summer test series. If you're not aware, if the USA Eagles will be traveling to Twickenham in London to play the England side, and that's a game on the 4th of July, U.S. Independence Day, no less. The time for that game has not been announced. At the moment, the initial setup was that only 10,000 spectators would be there. They're already selling tickets for that game. But as Gary said, it looks like they're going to probably up that with the lockdown restrictions easing in the UK, possibly as many as 30,000. That should be epic for Eagles who've never been to Twickenham, and for fans who want to go watch the game. And then they'll follow that up 6 days later with a game in Dublin at Aviva Stadium against Ireland, and that should be epic as well. So that's two. And then later in the summer, the Eagles will take on Canada as part of the qualification for the 2023 Rugby World Cup that takes place in France.